Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Star Scholars Leadership Series. I am your host, Mary McConnor, and today we are joined by Dr. Bill Hardgrave, President of the University of Memphis. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks, MJ. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer for me because for our listeners, just so they know, I was a graduate student at Auburn University when Bill was the dean and then provost at Auburn. So I got to watch that transition, and we can talk about that a little later. But I had to start with this question because I have yet to meet a junior faculty member who says, you know what, one day I think I want to be a senior administrator. So I'm curious, when you entered academia as a junior faculty member, when you started out, did you aspire to one day become a department chair or dean, or did you want to take on a leadership position at all?
MJ, when I started off as a junior faculty member, I don't think I knew what a department chair, a dean, or president was. No, I mean, in all seriousness, no, absolutely not. That I certainly was not aspiring to that end at all. I mean, I was, as a typical junior faculty, I was, look, as my first tenure track position, I was focused on making sure I did a great job in the classroom and that I was doing, research that mattered. And that was my focus. It was absolutely not about, hey, at some point I want to position myself to be a department chair, dean, or provost or president. In all honesty, I wouldn't have even known how to position myself at that point. So right. I'd say that wasn't even in the realm of things I was thinking about at that time.
Oh, I figured I'd ask because I was like, maybe he'll be the first person I've ever met.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not the first. No,
it's all good.
Maybe your next guest will have that early what they wanted to be there.
Yeah. Well, as a follow-up to that then, so here's the question I have. So when you did get tapped on the shoulder or when someone said, you make a great department head, what was that like? Did you say, did you have like some reservations about it? Or were you like, yeah, maybe I could do this?
My path was a little bit unorthodox. I was never a department chair.
Oh, you weren't?
Or an associate dean.
Oh, okay.
I went from being a faculty member to being a dean.
Okay, got it. So you're a full professor, and then you transitioned from professor to academic dean to provost, and then president.
Yeah. Okay. Now with that, I started and ran the IT Research Institute and the RFID Research Center. So did I have leadership responsibilities? Absolutely, through those centers. But not, you normally think of the natural progression in right. higher education, right? Of department chair, associate dean, provost, and so forth. I kind of skipped 2 steps. So I probably need to go back and repeat those. So
no, at this point now, I think you're in a good spot. So as a follow-up to that then, what did it look like for you in terms of at each stage? Were there certain professional development opportunities that prepared you for those positions, since you did go straight from the professoriate, like full professor, to deanship? Like, did you participate in any trainings or programs, or what was that process like?
Although I didn't know it at the time, I had a dean who, Doyle Williams, was started as dean the day that I started as a new assistant professor. So he didn't hire me because he was being hired at the same time I was being hired. But we started at the University of Arkansas on the same day at the start of the new semester. And within the first year, and certainly over the next couple of years, he was very intentional about getting me involved in things. And again, I didn't know it at the time that he had kind of taken an interest and saw something in me that, I didn't even see in myself. Back to the conversation about, hey, what was I aspiring? I wasn't, right? I was a brand new assistant professor, but Doyle saw something in me. And so he would involve me with all these things. He would take me, like when he was working on the $50 million gift for the Waltons,
Mhm.
which was when they got the gift, it was the largest gift, a single gift ever given to a business school at that time. And he would take me with the Waltons when he would go meet with them. And here I was I was, 3 or 4 year assistant professor. And I hadn't, and now looking back, I now see what he was doing. At the time, I just thought it was kind of cool and he'd take me along. But, he would give me responsibilities, like even as assistant professor, like, you know what, we need to reinvent our MBA program. Bill, I want you to lead that effort. Oh, okay. And I would gladly take these things on. And again, so it was really mentoring, and I didn't even know it. And it was
Mhm.
professional development, and I didn't even know it. Right. And that I think and we'll probably talk about this, but that really has given me a perspective on how I try to mentor and professionally develop those around me. But now I took every opportunity. I would be invited to, a seminar or whatever they'd have on, development, and I'd go to those things. So I did, but I wished I could say it was intentional, but it wasn't. It was probably intentional on Bill Williams' part as my dean, but I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, and you know what? You brought up a few good points, the importance of mentorship and also being exposed in terms of like that direct experience.
Yeah,
Because, a lot of us do go through different professional development programs and we'll see something online like, I wonder if I should register for this. But I'm a firm believer as well. There's nothing that beats that hands-on direct experience in the field,
yep,
working with other practitioners and scholars. And so I'm glad you touched on that. And you did bring up that you're now in a position where you can be a mentor to others,
yeah,
which I think is equally important. So for our listeners who are interested in, potentially becoming a department chair, dean, what would you advise them in terms of how to prepare for that, how to make that
yeah.
transition?
So let me talk about that mentoring relationship and how important it is, and how important it is for leaders such as myself in higher education to be intentional about helping others, even when they don't even know that they want help. Right. And again, I project myself, my young self, onto that because I didn't know that I needed to be mentored. I didn't know that I wanted to be mentored. But Doyle saw that there was something in me that said, this person could be a leader in higher education. And so I take that now, and I'm very intentional about kind of watching for that, and really kind of going out of my way. If I see a faculty member who really kind of exhibits those traits of really great servant leadership, which I think is so critically important in higher education, that that's the mindset you have, right, to serve others. And you see that they're doing it, really selflessly, that they're thoughtful, and there's just some qualities. And I will, if I see that exhibit, I'll go out of my way to say, hey, and this may be an assistant professor, associate, could be a full, but I'll go on my way and say, look, have you ever thought about, some leadership positions? And in many cases, like, no, I kind of like what I do. And it's like, I see something in you. Would you be willing to kind of go down that path? And I've been trying to do that. And I'll give you a great success story that just happened within the last month or so. There was one of the faculty members at Auburn. I saw that in her. I mean, she just had such great leadership qualities. And I really kind of went to her and said, hey, I think you got something. Well, she became department chair, and then when the dean stepped down, I put her in as interim dean, and then she just got a job as dean at the University of Kentucky. and
Nice.
and it's right. It's great kind of see how that happens. But I think as leaders, we really do have to be intentional to look for those that we can mentor. Now, on the flip side of that, the other thing that I do when I have a chance to go talk to groups, and whether it's on the staff side, the faculty side, or whatever, is I always offer up, look, if you really want to develop yourself as a leader, you have to have mentors. plural, right? And you've got to have people who can give you perspective, who can give you advice, people that you can trust, who are wanting to lead, to help you be a better leader. And I offer up, if I can be that for you, then you let me know, and I'd be happy to do that. And MJ, I wish that I wish I'd kept count over the years of the number of people have taken me up on that. And that's one of the most gratifying things that I do, is to sit down with somebody and just kind of talk through, share my experience, give them insight if they're struggling with something. Is, gosh, should I go down this path or this path? And, just, learn from the experience. I love doing that. And I think we all as leaders have to do more of that to prepare tomorrow's leaders.
Yeah. And you know what? I appreciate that. And it's very true, everyone. I'll tell you, because when I said, hey, Bill, I have this new series, it's new. Would you like to be a guest? And like in a heartbeat, you were like, absolutely. How can I support you? And so I've always appreciated that about you and your leadership style, how you do kind of, you lift as you climb. And I love that. And so let me ask you this. Because the presidency, and I study it, as a higher ed administrator, PhD, and I've always had to study certain things and learn about certain things and watch certain trends in higher education. And the university presidency is an incredibly multifaceted position, right? You have to be what we call here in the US a jack of all trades. And so for our listeners who may not know what that term means, it's you have to understand so many different areas and be an expert in a little bit of everything, almost everything from fundraising to student success. And then, you being the president of an R1 public university, you deal with legislation and certain things that you may not see in private education. Right. So I guess the question I have for you is, for people who are on the academic side, who are faculty members and researchers, what advice would you give to them on how they can become more versed in other areas outside of just the academic realm?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a difficult question to answer, right? Because we, especially as faculty, that's one of the, I think, the hardest things for a faculty member to really get outside of themselves to be leaders, because we get so focused on our research and what we're teaching and the department that we're in. That's why we end up so siloed. And that's not a criticism. It's just, it's how we're trained as researchers, because look, we're doing research on this topic. And it's an inch wide and a mile deep, right? But that's how you become an expert in the field, right? As you really focus on that. Well, leadership requires you to be an inch deep and a mile wide, right? To know a little bit about everything, right? So you need to know enough about budgeting and finance. You need to know enough about facilities. You need to know enough about student affairs. You don't need to know everything, but you have to know enough to understand why things happen the way they do, and to have an appreciation for the value of those things. And the higher up you go, you have to have that, it gets that inch wide the inch deep gets wider and wider, though, because more things come into your field. When I was, as a faculty member, I was an information systems faculty member. Then when I became a dean, not only did I have information systems under me, but as business school, I had accounting and finance and management and marketing and supply chain. So I had to understand those other disciplines enough to understand what their needs were. And then as you become provost, then it's no longer, well, now it's just business. Nope, it's not just business. It's now vet med and pharmacy and the fine arts and the humanities, right? And it gets wider and wider. And you just kind of have to open up that aperture to have a broader view and to develop an appreciation. Now, one of the things that I've personally done to help with that is, for example, when I became provost and I'd been business dean, I didn't know anything about vet med. So I went over and I spent a day at our vet med school, and just show me what you do. Let's sit down and let me talk to some of your faculty. Let me talk to some of your students. Let's talk to the dean. And I just spent a day just kind of understanding, tell me what you all do and what you do best. And where your needs are. And that really helps me develop that understanding of that, really that inch deep understanding. So at least I have a knowledge there. And I think we kind of have to do that in other areas. And then if you really, there's an area, let's say budgeting, which is so important in today's environment, right? Because the financial resources are not unlimited. So now with my background in business, I was fine. I understand budgeting, but that's one that trips people up that might not come out of a business discipline. Well, there's where you go back and you mentioned you get all these these professional development opportunities. That's definitely one where you say, oh, there's a 2-hour seminar on the basics of budgeting in a higher education environment. Wait, that would be a good one, right? And I spend 2 hours to get a broad overview and just go out and find those things that you know that you don't have a lot of knowledge or insight in, and spend some more time learning about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as a follow-up to that, it's important to have internal knowledge and an understanding of how the university works, because it is indeed a very complex organization. It's a lot of different departments, but externally too, you have to deal with so many stakeholders externally. And so I guess, for our listeners, what does that look like? Like, who are some of the different partners in the community that you have to engage with, and in terms of community engagement?
And I think generally as you move up the leadership ladder, the number of constituents, if not the categories of constituents grow, certainly the number of constituents within each of the categories grow, right? If you're a department chair, then you're probably dealing with people that graduated maybe from that department. You're dealing with faculty in that department, students in that department, right? You go to the college level, now it's graduates of all the college, and and it gets wider and wider. And so by the time you get to president, I mean, you're now dealing with the community in which you live in, your state and federal legislators, the business community, your alumni, all the faculty, all the staff, all the students. And the thing about it is, and I think the thing that trips up some leaders is that some leaders want to find a solution, or they want to find a situation that makes everyone happy. And it doesn't exist.
Right.
It doesn't exist. And so if you're always chasing that, you'll always be chasing that, because the constituents are so varied in what they do. What you have to do as a leader is make sure that you're doing the very best you can for the university, and doing what's right, knowing that everybody will not be happy with whatever it is you do. And I don't care what it is you do, some people will not be happy. And I had to learn that lesson, MJ, and if I can take this second to share with you, I had to learn this lesson kind of the hard way. This is one of those, I've been told, like, look, whatever you do, someone will be unhappy. And and look, it's somebody kind of coming in new, I thought, yeah, whatever, that's fine. But as a new dean, we were in a situation. I came in kind of in the Great Recession, right? So I hadn't had raises for a couple of years. Money was tight, but we'd had a really good fundraising year in the college, and so I figured out a way where we gave everybody who worked for me in the college $1,000. Now, people didn't expect it, right? They didn't know this was coming. Gave people $1,000. I had people who were upset with me.
Really?
And it was such a great life lesson. And no matter what you do, someone will be upset with you. I mean, it was a great, and I share that because you would think you go in and you hand everybody $1,000, everybody would be jumping up and down and patting you on the back, and this is awesome. I had people who were upset with me because I had people come in. What, you gave Bob over here $1,000? I'm better than Bob. Why'd Bob get $1,000 and I got $1,000? You should have given me $1,500. I mean, that some of right. We look at it and go, what?
But from an equity standpoint.
but it truly is a great example of if you do things because you think it'll make people happy, there will always be somebody who doesn't appreciate or like what you've done. You have to do it for the right reasons, and then just know that you've done it for that, and not everybody's going to be happy. And the higher up you go, the more constituents someone or some group will be unhappy with what you do.
Yeah, and that's a really great point too, because I know there was a time where I used to kind of fall victim to, okay, all right, I'll get that done for you, the people
Right.
pleasing. But
Yep.
you're absolutely right. The more people you have to work with, the more decisions you have to make. Not everyone's going to be happy because
Yeah.
everybody has different perspectives about what should be done and what shouldn't be done.
Yeah.
But that's just something you embrace it and say, okay, how
Yeah.
can we move on and make this initiative happen or whatever
That's
it may
right.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess one final question I have for you, because we talked about this a little bit, is this need for more pipeline programs and pathways, right, for junior faculty members and even staff members who want to take on leadership positions, or for students who want to maybe transition to academic positions, or who may
Yeah.
not even know that that's an option.
Right.
I guess I'm curious, have you ever implemented or instituted any different like pathway programs, or is that something you would consider doing during your presidency for students and faculty members?
Yeah, we do have to do that, and we actually started working on that when I was as an initiative at Auburn, and one of the things that we did well there was, as a member of the SEC provost all got together actually quite often. And one of the things that we recognized as provost was that we needed to have a pipeline of folks who were going to go into higher education.
Right.
And so that's one type of pipeline. And there's several ways we looked at it. Some of the fields, right, we just didn't have enough people regardless, right, going into that field. And so let's see what we can do to develop students who may have an affinity for that to go on in to that field. Others were where we just had so little diversity in the field. How can we be more intentional about getting underrepresented groups into that field, and working on it collectively as the SEC? Because one of the things we recognized was that a lot of times if you go and you get a PhD from an SEC school, that you go to another SEC school to take your first job anyway. And so if we worked on filling the pipeline, then we kind of selfishly worked on filling, the opportunity to hire these folks as they come out of other SEC schools. So that one was one. I'm really proud that we got that started and had a lot of early success on identifying those folks and really getting them involved in going through the PhD programs. But then once you get the PhD and you get started, there were some things we did. Again, in the SEC, we had the leadership development program, the SEC leadership development program, where each university, I think we could identify 3 or 4 people from our campus each year that would go through this year-long process, and they actually had a chance to visit, different campuses that work with those selected from the other campuses. Great opportunity, to get exposed to leaders from the other universities, presidents, provosts, deans, and so forth. And that was really a good program as well. And then just within the confines of the walls of a university, putting together some programs, especially around young leaders, and just getting them exposed to different folks, whether it was an athletic, a coach, football coach to talk about leadership, or a department chair to talk about leadership, and all the way up to the presidents and board of trustees and so forth, just exposing to different thoughts and ideas about how to lead in different situations. So yeah, I mean, you have to do that. We can't sit back and wait for that to develop without really trying to do something about it. And we can do something about it. I think for so long we just assumed that it would happen organically. And if we wait for it to happen organically, and we don't try to really be purposeful about it, well then we sit back and go, gosh, why does everybody in this field look the same? Why don't we have more diversity? Well, because we weren't really trying to do anything about it, right? And so and that's what happens when you let it happen organically. If you really want to change the direction of something, you've really got to work at it. And so I think we're seeing some improvement, but it takes a while. I mean, this pipeline when we talk about, I mean, it's a 10-year pipeline, if you will, to start somebody thinking about a career in higher education, because I don't know about you, but I certainly didn't think about a career in higher education when I was in high school or even when I was in college, right? Undergraduate. I didn't, did you? Did you think
Well,
about it?
actually, so quick story there. I actually wanted to be a psychologist, and it was an
Okay.
internship my senior year at Grand Valley State University, where I did my undergrad, that totally changed the trajectory of my career. So I did an internship in the student affairs office, and I was like, wait, people get paid to do this and have
Okay.
have these cool events. And so from there I did go on and do a master's
Okay.
in
Good.
student affairs administration. But no, starting out I wanted to be a psychologist. So
Yeah.
no, I didn't plan to go into higher education
But you
initially.
had that eye-opening event that went, oh, okay, there
Right.
you go, right? And that's
Exactly.
that's the type of thing we have to do, right? Is we have to have these eye-opening events for folks, to expose them, so at least they know, right? Because it's hard to move down a field that you're not even aware exists,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Well, okay. I know I said the last question was the final quote, but this is the final question, right?
Yeah.
So for that researcher or faculty member or student, staff member who's listening to this, and they're thinking, maybe I should one day aspire to, pursue a leadership position. What would you say to that person on why they should consider it?
Well, I'm going to go back, and if I have time, can I tell a story, if I may?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So, um, I'm an accidental academic, right? This was not planned. There was no way I was ever going to go down this path. I didn't know anything about academics. I was an MJ. I think my story a little bit, but I grew up a first generation high school graduate, right? So the idea of being a college president was, I mean, you're talking about another galaxy away. We didn't even know what college was, and so certainly not being a college president. So I was fortunate enough that I did get to college, and I started my career doing a couple of different software startup companies, and then just by the grace of God, people put in my way and guided me. I went and got a PhD, honestly, without knowing what that really meant. I grew to love the teaching and the research, but I didn't know that much about it. I just had people going, oh, you know what, you ought to do this. And I was, oh, okay, let me go do this. I'll go get a PhD. Like that was going to be easy to do. But I went down that path. And honestly, MJ, when I was an assistant professor, I did not know why I was doing this. I knew that I really liked the research and I liked teaching. And, as we talked at earlier, I certainly didn't think about, well, I want to be a department chair or dean or whatever. I didn't even really know that much about being a professor, right? Because I didn't have role models and others. And so earlier I referred to the Dean Doyle Williams, and he with him being a brand new dean at the same time that I was a new professor. And at the end of the first week of the first semester, he held a town hall meeting, and he basically just answered questions for a while, and it was starting to wrap up, and he said, I've got time for one more question. And there was a young lady there, and I think she was trying to kind of trip him up a little bit. And he said, I've got time for one more question. Yes, you right here. And she said, Dean Williams, what's the meaning of life? And without hesitation, he said, to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me was like, oh, I mean, that was the big, oh my gosh, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm supposed to be here. And so, we have an opportunity in higher education to make a difference every day. Every day. Not every profession can say that. In higher education, we can make a difference every day. As a professor, my field of influence in making a difference is about like this. That was the students I interacted with. And I took it as my personal mission that I was going to make a difference in every single student that I had. And so your influence is about like this. Well, then when I started running the research centers, it grew to about like this.
Mm.
And then when I was offered the opportunity to become a dean, it grew to here. And then when I was offered the opportunity to be a provost, it grew to here. And now as president, my opportunity to make a difference. I look out my window and there's 22,000 opportunities outside my window to make a difference every day. That's why somebody ought to consider moving up that ladder, because, and you know what, but if you don't, you can still make that difference. But if you want to make a bigger difference and touch more lives and have that opportunity, I tell you, I can't imagine anything more fulfilling than higher education and being a leader in higher education.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I have to tell you, I've heard that question quite a bit. What's the meaning of life? Right. It's one of those philosophical questions we hear. And I have to say, that's actually my favorite response to make a difference. The simplicity and the sincerity in that. It's just like, oh, I'm here to make a difference. And that really resonates with me. So thank you for sharing that with me and our listeners. So, well, Bill, thank you so much for your time. I know you're really busy, especially as a university president. so I appreciate you for sitting down and talking with me. And hopefully our listeners will find this to be just as insightful as I did, and they can take some little nuggets away and consider, moving up in ranks and maybe taking some different positions as they open up.
Yeah. Well, can I offer one more just quick nugget before we leave?
Sir.
As you move up, and especially in higher education, because you're moving from a faculty member where your skill set is really teaching and or doing research, depending on which position that you have, right? And we get really good at that. And then being a department chair is very different, and being an associate dean is very different. Being a dean is very different. There is this was an accidental thing. Where I ran into a well-known executive coach and author by the name of Marshall Goldsmith. And it was and if we had time, I'd tell you the whole story, but I won't bore your listeners with the whole story now. But by accident, I ran into him at LaGuardia Airport, and he had just finished this book at the time. And it was at the time where I was contemplating, whether to be because I had some calls about, hey, would you be interested in talking to us about a dean's position? I hadn't been an administrator, and I thought, a dean, why would I want to do that? Or what does a dean really do? And he had just written a book called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And it was so, and the title kind of gives away the what the book is really all about, but it is about being very introspective about, hey, I may be a great faculty member who is a fabulous in the classroom, a great researcher, but that skill set doesn't make me a good dean. So what got me here as a successful faculty member won't get me there as a successful dean. So I have to be very thoughtful about, what does it take to be a good dean in this case, for the example I'm using, and do I have that skill set? And if I don't have that skill set, can I develop that skill set? So it really is understanding your strengths of where you are now, what it takes to be successful and where you want to go, and can you bridge that gap, and how do you really get there? And that's one of the things when I have a chance to do leadership talks. It's one of the 5 leadership points I usually bring out. That's number 2 on my list, but we won't have time to go through all 5 today. But that, what got you here won't get you there, and you've got to know that so that you're successful in every step of the way. Thank you for giving me time to share that.
No, thank you. And I'm glad you shared that. I'm sure I usually go back and watch the videos, and I'm taking notes, and I'm like, that was really good. And so I'm sure that's one of those things I'll always keep up here as well. The meaning of life is to make a difference, and what got you there.
What got you here won't get you there.
What got you here won't get you there. So thank you for sharing that with me and our listeners. So,
absolutely.
Well, I'm sure I'll get to see you around. I'll be at a University of Memphis football game. By the way, everyone, I live in Memphis, so that's how I get to see them. we're in the same city. So we're gonna run into each other at some point again, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, MJ. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and all the best to you.
Thank you.